All right, here's the new car. Take two. Not a Miata. This is a bug-eye WRX. Obviously, as you can see, 167,000 miles, pretty decent shape for the money, minus some things that we'll talk about. Yeah, so I went and picked it up yesterday. The tires were in terrible shape on the stock wheels, so actually here's a couple clips of me working on that. So I got this set of 2010 curbed up OEM Impreza wheels with these Continental pure contact all seasons on them. They're in a lot better shape than the tires that are currently on the WRX. So I picked them up for pretty cheap. My plan is to throw those on so I can get the car home, drive it around for a bit while I sort it out, and then I'll be putting race tires on it sometime in the late winter or early spring. You can see that right there. That's a big cut in the side of the stock tires. Or not stock tires. This car's got 160,000 miles on it. You know, tires that came on it. These ones are pretty well worn down. Not horrible if I just had to get across town, but I got 200 miles to go, so not taking any chances. I got those boring OE Impreza tires and wheels on there, and I don't know, it looks okay. It could be worse. And there was a really bad surging problem when you accelerated that I diagnosed ahead of time as probably the mass airflow sensor, so I brought some cleaning stuff. I cleaned that, as you can see here. All right, so that's all the residue. I just sprayed the MAF out. It looked pretty dirty. It looks a lot better now. So I'm gonna let it dry for a few minutes, and I'm gonna hit it again. I think I'll still probably replace it, but that's a pretty comforting sign that that is so messed up. Or so dirty, at least. All right, that is the stock intake with the MAF back in it. Or no, sorry, not the stock intake. That is an aftermarket intake that I'm not too crazy about and probably will be replacing. That's just what came on the car. See, it's got a Cobb turbo back on it. I think the up pipe is stock from what I can see. Checked all the major fluids, reset the ECU, and it's been running pretty well ever since. I am going to replace the MAF, but cleaning it's probably good enough to get it home, because I got about a 200-mile trip to get this thing back to where we live. So that's going to be a little bit of an adventure because of some stuff we're going to talk about now. The first thing is this car is filthy. The people who owned it were actually friends of the family. They did a decent job maintaining the car. They bought it with most of the mods that are on it were already here, and they drove it for a few years just as like a grocery getter. They also used it to do like some house projects and other things. I mean, they use it like it's a 16-year-old economy car, which, you know, in a lot of ways it kind of is. And it's super dirty. And there's lots of like vague STI things everywhere, which I don't really like, including the key and that surround ring and some other stuff. So I'm gonna be making more in-depth videos going through everything on the car, but I just want you to appreciate that I have to drive it looking this dirty all the way home. I'm very picky about how clean my cars are. And this is probably going to be a lot of fun to clean. All right, so we're about midway through the drive home, about an hour and 45 minutes in, and here's how it's doing so far. So overall, it drives fine. This is definitely in rough shape. The suspension is so shot that I'm actually getting nauseous because it feels like the springs are fine. And I think they're STI springs from what I saw. But the struts, which also look like there's some JDM STI strut, I think they're completely blown to where they're not damping anything. So every time you like go over a bump, the car is just bouncing nonstop. Like, it's terrible. Like, I don't think I've ever driven a car with a decent amount of power that handles reasonably okay for an hour and been so miserable. And I've driven some like real turds. So that part really sucks. The interior's filthy. I don't want to be in here a minute longer than I have to be until I can clean it. AC works fine, heat works fine. The stereo keeps cutting out between like the left and the right channels, so I don't know if that's my aux cable or if that's the stereo or something, but it's not in great shape. The rear view mirror, somebody glued another mirror over it so it doesn't auto dim anymore, and there's no dimming option, so I can't dim the mirror at night, which means it's a really good thing I'm not like driving at night. Just doesn't make any sense. I filled up once. I've gotten 22 miles per gallon, so that's not bad. That part's going okay. You can see behind me, you can't see anything out the rear window because the tint is messed up. So I want to make a video where I go through and list everything that's actually wrong with the car. I'm not going to do that now. Now I'm just giving you, I guess, my general driving impressions. I like the seats better now than I did when I first started to drive. My lower back was hurting some, but now I feel fine. But basically, I just want to get this home. I want to get it unloaded because it is loaded up with, you know, it's got the 3 of the wheels in it. It's got some presents from Christmas. It's got other stuff. So that's not helping it out at all, but I really think the suspension is just shot, and I don't really want to drive this around anymore until I get the suspension fixed because it doesn't handle that well, and it's just a pain to ride in. It's just unpleasant. So that's where we're at. We'll keep going, but I think the engine seems like it's fine. It still hesitates a little bit every once in a while, but it's not bad. I think we're gonna make it home with no problem, and then we can really start like digging into this thing to see if I can fix it. So we made it home. No real problems. Fuel economy wasn't great. It was like 22 miles per gallon. The suspension is terrible, but you've already heard me talk about that like 3 or 4 times. And it's super dirty. So I'm gonna do a video where I go through and show you everything that's wrong with it. And of course I'm gonna catalog like the whole process of fixing this thing up. But yeah, it's not great. It's a good solid base. I'm happy with my decision to get it, but it's in pretty rough shape right now. So I wanted to go into a little more detail on why I went with the WRX, and this WRX specifically, which you can see sitting behind me. And kind of what some of my plans are for it. So a WRX was actually not the next car I was gonna get for an autocross or a track car. I already bought a Miata and I had videos planned and I did all kinds of stuff. So I'm gonna show you a couple quick clips from that instead of doing like a full video, because you guys know that's not the car I'm going with. So I'm assuming you don't wanna see a whole video of me messing with it. All right, here is the new track / autocross car, 1996 Mazda Miata. Let me see if you're gonna see in an upcoming video where I've just gotten to this point. I removed the seats and then I was like, wait a second, I still need to do an intro video. You can see I've already got the tires on it from the wheels and tires from the Spider. Its legacy will live on, at least for a little bit. It has KYB AGX adjustable struts with Tyne S lowering springs. So same lowering springs I had on the Spider, with adjustable shocks that are actually pretty good. I was impressed by them when I drove them at autocross. So the season's over for autocross, but there was a non-points shakedown event last weekend, and I took this there just to see what condition it would be in. So that's it, that's the car. This isn't gonna be like a super in-depth intro because you're gonna get to know the car a lot better as I start to work on it. So the problem I ran into, and I ended up not making a video just for this because I thought nobody would really care, but I am too tall to fit in a Miata with all the safety gear. So I done a bunch of research and it looked like planted seat brackets were the way to go. You could get the back of the seat pretty much all the way on the floor. And I was all set to get those, and then a guy a couple hours away was selling a pair of planted seat brackets, and he was parting out a Miata with a spec Miata cage, a good seat, planted seat brackets, a few other things. So me and my wife were gonna be in that area. So I asked him if I could come by with my helmet and like do a test fitting in the car, and if the seat brackets worked well, buy the seat brackets and possibly the seat. So as soon as I sat in the seat, I knew that wasn't gonna work. I think it was a Momo Start seat. It was way too narrow. It's made for like 32-inch hips, and that's not me. So I knew that wasn't really gonna work. But I was still way too tall for the roll bar. My head poked up a little bit. I've got a picture I can throw in right here. So my head poked up way too much. It was pretty much immediately obvious that that wasn't going to work. which really stinks because I'd already bought the Miata and I already took it to an autocross, and I really liked it at autocross. Like, it did really well. It had KYB AGX shocks, Garage Star door bushings, flying Miata frame rails, a head swap off a 99 Miata, so like the freer flowing head, and then the piggyback to run the variable valve timing. What else did it have? It was pretty bone stock interior. Actually, the interior was in great shape. It was a good like base to start from, and I was all excited to do it, and all the math I'd done had said that I should be able to fit in it if I had a seat bolted like directly to the floor, like a Kirky racing seat or something else. And that turned out not to be the case because I have a very tall torso and shorter legs. So I've got like the torso of a 6'5" person and the legs of a 6 foot tall person, and that adds up to a 6'3" person, but my proportions are off a little bit from most of the advice people give online. So when I was measuring seats and everything else, I was off by a couple inches, and when you're this tall in a Miata, a couple inches matter. So like, here's a picture of me sitting on the floor of the car with my helmet on. So that's no seat, period, and I'm leaning back some to make it work. And just couldn't make it work. After doing that test fitting in the Miata, I figured out that not only would I not really fit and pass the safety inspection, but I don't think I could safely get out of the car if there was a problem, and that made me uncomfortable. So talked it over with my wife on the way home, and I decided to cut my losses, sell the car, and get something that I could definitely fit in. So I considered getting like a C5 Corvette, and I still would like to get a C5 or a C6 one day, but I didn't get one this time because I don't think either of us are good enough drivers to really push a Corvette on a track, and I don't want that temptation and the extra wear and tear and the potential danger of having a car that powerful yet. I've always loved Bug-Eye WRXs. And this one was owned by friends of the family who I told them years ago that if they ever went to sell it, I wanted to be in line for it. So they didn't do really any of the modifications to the car other than repainting it. It came black and they painted it candy apple red. Everything else about it was done that way by the previous owner, which means it's gonna be a lot of fun figuring out what they did wrong, anything I need to do to correct the car and get it back to like a good stock position so I can start racing it. But I've always wanted a WRX. My chances to own a decently clean one are probably drying up. This one was really cheap. Like I said in the video title, it's the cheapest WRX I could find for sale anywhere close to me. And it still had to drive like 3 hours to go get it. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's gonna be a big project. It's not gonna be tougher than the Spider engine swap as far as I know. But there is a ton of stuff that's going to have to be done, and I'm going to chronicle it all here on the channel, whereas I didn't really have that channel when I did the Spider swap. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. I'm starting to put a little more work into some of the filming and the setups for everything so that it's hopefully more enjoyable to watch. So let me know if that works for you. And I'll see you on the next video where I think we're going to go through and talk about everything that's wrong with the new WRX, which, by the way, I don't know if I said this earlier in the video, I have decided to name it Cherry Bomb because of the lovely red color and because I like naming vehicles. So I'll see you for the next project.